Yeah, I agree. Listen, I'm going to ask you something. So there are lots of different thoughts about why it is that we're going through this particular experience right now. Um, I've got my thoughts on it that it's part of this was always going to happen. This is part of this process that we signed up to be involved in, which is to go through this and to make ourselves better people. But there's also kind of a lot of people talking about the fact that we are actually creating this around us. So what's your take on that? Do you think it's us projecting this onto our surroundings?
Okay, million dollar question. This is a biggie. Um, I think everyone's aware how many human beings there are on this planet at the moment. And this hasn't happened before. The amount of human beings right now on this earth is is not natural from the point of view of nature. And whenever any species in nature grows beyond these boundaries, they die and then they start up again. So there is all this sort of counter movements to maintain balance. Nature is always trying to balance itself.
Sure.
What we've done, what we've managed to do, is to put the finger to nature and say, no, we're not going to take any notice of you. We're going to do our thing. In our arrogance, uh, we know better. And what we've done is we've made ourselves very sick in the process. However, that aside, so why are there so many of us now? And there is a reason for that. I mean, depends who you speak with. But according to Charlie, um, 10,000 years ago, there was a change in the cosmic energy that came or did not come our way on this planet Earth. And I think the closest I'm coming to understand this is that there was suddenly an absence of the energy. If you like, there are life-giving vibrations that permeate the universe. For whatever reason, this corner of the galaxy lost temporarily, it lost that vibrational goodness, whatever you like to call it, God energy, loving energy, call it what you will. And so I'm taking the word Kali Yuga from the Hindus, who they say that the epoch of Kali Yuga was from 5,000 years ago all the way to about 400,000 years into the future. Like the galaxy goes through epochs. So that's I was unaware of this till Charlie told me something's new, and then I became aware of the Kali Yuga, and I began to ask questions with regard to that. Um, and as far as Charlie's concerned, the Kali Yuga actually began not 5,000 but 10,000 years ago, after the deluge.
Okay.
So that was the fall of mankind, the deluge, from the deluge. Before that, humanity was spiritually advanced, developed, coherent, together, and we have no idea what that is because we've fallen so far down into the darkness that we have no idea what it is to be part of the light, except that there's been a break in that, and the that spiritual energy, energizing energy, God's energy, call it what you will, began again at the beginning of this year.
I was going to ask you
And
about that.
that,
So yeah, okay.
yeah, and that will last for the next 15 years.
Okay.
So huge changes are now beginning to happen as a result of that um, energy, which is the way it's meant to be. So the possibility of coming out of the darkness has just increased 1,000-fold. So why are there so many of us? Because from the point of view of the soul dimension, 10,000 years is nothing. And from the point of view of the cosmos, 10,000 years is a very, very small amount. And so they have been able to predict, increasingly so with more accuracy, because, the future is never fixed, however much we'd like to hope it is. And it depends on a whole lot of variables. Within the world of humanity, the variables are immense. The more people there are in the world, the more variables there are for all manner of possibilities, not all of them good per se. However, the plan was that this will be an opportunity because the Kali Yuga will come back for the next 400 plus 1,000 years. So this is an opportunity for those souls who are ready to be moved to a different part of the galaxy, to different planets, where they will not be under the dark cloud of the Kali Yuga epoch on this earth. So why is there so many of us? Precisely for this reason. But also, with the more people that are born, the more opportunity for what I'm now calling the NPC players, the non-playing characters. This is the very, very inexperienced souls who have no chance of controlling a human body, of being in charge of the higher aspects of a human being. So they're not even controlling the ego, let alone connecting with any of the higher faculties available to us, which have always been available. They're part of who we are, but not available to us because of where we are at. And so there's a proportion of humanity which will never go off planet, but who are for that, for those who wish to manipulate humanity. I'll come back to that in a minute. So we've now got a proportion of humanity who is ready to come to their senses in a literal sense, get off your head and come into your senses in your body, be in the here and now, because that is the only way we can deal with the traumas, with the shadow, which we may get to talk about. We have to be present in the moment in our bodies to be a witness to what's going on within our system. So now all of this will become easier for those. I was writing a little article about it. This came to my head, and I call them L drivers. There's a lot of people on this earth who have been in so many previous incarnations that really they know how to drive the car, but they're still going around with L plates because they're so lost in their heads, they can't see the wood for the trees, but they know how to do it. They just haven't been able, the indoctrination has been so great that they just haven't had a chance. But they know how to do this. All they have to do is listen to their hearts, and that will happen. So anyway, time to throw off the L plates. Really take control of your vehicle and your senses and connect with your heart and your higher faculties. Anyway, that's why there's so many of us. Some are opportunistic at the bottom, and some because we're ready to move elsewhere. And this is the perfect opportunity over these next 15 plus years to get our act together. You don't need to get your act together to become a living Buddha. You don't need to become one of the disciples. You don't need to become perfect. You don't need to be fully there. You just need to be there halfway. That's all that's required. Make it halfway, and then the aliens who are here to help us, who are here to take us to other places, will do the rest. Uh,
Okay.
because if you die in this planet and you haven't made it to the halfway mark, you'll be lost here till the next opportunity arises, whenever that is.
Sure.
Whereas if you make it to the halfway mark, you're still alive, you're taking a life to another planet. When you die in the other planet, even if you don't make it all the way, it won't take long before you do move. Because the whole point about spirit being in a human body is to progress, not to keep repeating, regurgitating the card, time and again and again. Uh, so anyway,
Okay. Okay. So that's
stop there.
interesting. That's an interesting view. I, as you talk about what the information that you get, I'm kind of passing it into what the emissaries tell me about, because lately they've been talking about timelines a lot. In fact, it got to a point where I said, I'm not going to talk anymore about timelines. Then I continued to talk about them. But they were saying that we're coming up to, and remember this, their perception of time is not our perception of time. They're coming up to could mean anything, but we're coming up to a split off. So they're very, very clear about that, and how those who choose not to, those who choose to stay, really, it's a choice of, I'm very happy with what's happening. I want to be part of this. They stay, and those of us who are ready and prepared to move on, we move on. I mean, you're saying, we'll be taken up live to another place and all of that. Very, very, you would know that it was happening. And the emissaries they seem to indicate that the split is something that we won't be aware of until we'll only be aware of it in retrospect, because it'll be something so organic that we won't know. That's what they say. But what's interesting about what you said is, to do that, we only need to be halfway. We only need to get halfway. And it made me think of the law of one, something that David Wilcock used to talk a lot about. And his, in the law of one, that's exactly what they talk in terms of percentages. And they said, you must be 51%, they called it, service to others. You must be in that 51%. Whatever, there's plenty of names we can give it, but it's that you've got to be more than half. And I suppose it makes sense, even if you think of it in a logical, a balance way. You've got to tip the balance, even if it's 1%, tip the balance over to the right side. Otherwise, you might end up on the wrong side,
Okay. From Charlie's viewpoint, um, if you were to say that we're totally free of ego and pure spirit, then that would be 100%.
Okay.
The true humans are 95% there. Human beings on this earth, the highest possibility is about 88 something percent.
Okay.
And so no human being can detach themselves from their ego to such an extent beyond 88%.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Um, which is why we're human.
Yeah.
And so if you were to cut 88 in half, I never thought of it this way before, but 88, that comes to 44 something percent.
Sure.
So there you go. So that's the 45% integration. So from Charlie's point of view, he's been very emphatic that the minimum, the cutoff line is 45%.
Sure.
44 won't cut it. You've got to be 45%. And the reason for that is very straightforward. And this is because people will be taken up to spaceships in which the true humans exist. And it is not possible for a person who is full of repressed emotions, i.e., they've got a large shadow, to coexist in the same space as a true human. Chalk and cheese. You just cannot bring the two together. Their reality does not allow for that level of negativity in their world, of projected negativity. So it's just not going to happen. So 45% is the minimum.
Okay. Okay. And I suppose in terms of that, that's of our potential of 88, 45% is the 51, 52, 53% of our potential. So halfway.
Yeah,
Sounds about right.
yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's good news for us, that in a lot of ways, because that doesn't mean that we have to be perfect. It doesn't mean that we have to seek perfectionism, which many people do, and that's actually quite an egotistical thing to do, to seek perfectionism, but actually to accept that, hey, I've just got to do the best I can and make sure I tip the balance. It's a lot more workable. It's a lot easier to manage, and it takes the stress off as well.
Well, that was the good news. The bad news is the majority of humanity right now is around 20%.
Bummer.
Okay. And I mean, in this, I'm including all the NPCs.
Sure, yeah.
All right. And, I've been working with clients for a few years. And so far, the hardest movement is to make it from 20 to about 25%.
Okay.
There's just so much baggage in the background that's the hardest one. But then once you get past that 25%, it begins to speed up.
Okay.
Because as you deal with your baggage, it's easier. I'll tell you what it is. When we're at 20%, we're very inflexible.
Mm.
And so as we climb, we become more and more flexible. And with flexibility, the easier it is to keep progressing. So it's like if you've never exercised, right? The toughest one is to become flexible, physically flexible, before you start doing, cartwheels or whatever. So yeah, it's tough to begin with, that first one. However, I'm hoping that because of the new facility created by the God energy, I'll just call it God energy. I mean,
Okay.
I just keep going around the bend. What do I call it?
Mm-hmm.
It's God energy. It will be easier and easier for those who have been round the mulberry bush a few times to, yes, begin to witness myself, begin to separate myself. I'm not my thoughts. I'm not in my head. My emotions, yes, okay. I can breathe into my emotions, create a little bit of separation. Yeah, see myself objectively. When I'm telling myself things like I'm no good, I'm disgusting, I hate myself, whatever, actually, that's not me. That's a program. Those are words in my head. If I keep repeating them, I'm just going to keep furthering the program. Separation, observing ourselves dispassionately. And the more we do that, the more we remember to do that, because that's one of the problems. If you're in your head, you don't even know you exist. You're just lost in the thoughts. But the more we're in our bodies, the more we are in our senses, the more we can be a witness to what's going on in our system, the more experience we gain and the faster we start to move. It's like a choo-choo train, right? Choo-choo, little, choo-choo, and then you go faster and faster.
Yeah.
So I have great hopes for humanity. I think we're going to do it. I think we will achieve this. But to begin with, we can see what's going on now in the world. People are beginning to wake up to politics. they're beginning to wake up. I'm hoping more and more of them to food. They're beginning to wake up to pharma. And, there's a lot of pushback. But nevertheless, people are beginning to open up their eyes and say, hold on a minute, this doesn't make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So this is the beginning. This is just the chew, chew, chew. That isn't waking up, guys. That's just beginning to get the engine going.
Sure.
Waking up is not to do with the world out there. Waking up is to do with the observing what's happening inside our bodies, in our emotions, in our head. Is when we question everything inside us. That's when we start to wake up in a real sense.
I agree entirely. And I know we probably talked about this before. I mentioned it a lot because it's so important for us to understand. The emissaries have always said that there are 3 steps to waking up. The waking up to the world, as you've described it, to all of those things, it's just the first step. And it's in many ways, it's the hardest step. It's like this, getting out of the 20%. It's the hardest step because you've got to drop all of your preconceptions. You've got to give up a tremendous part of your comfort. You've got to get out of your comfort zone. So it is a hard one, but it's only the first step. And the second step is, as you've described it, the emissaries say exactly the same. Then you wake up to self and you start looking inward and thinking, right, what do I need to sort out? And they're saying by dint of fact that you go into yourself, that's when you wake up to God, which is the last step, which is returning to God. So that's, and I asked the emissaries, give me a percentage. I think they humor me by giving me percentages. I don't really believe tremendously what they tell me, and I don't think they believe it either, but they kind of give me like a feel, I say, so what percentage of people right now are within the 3 steps, at some point, waking up to world, self, or God? And they said, we're at something like 45% of the world are in those steps, half. But they said the vast majority are in the first step of waking up to the world. And, as we go on further down, less and less are in those other steps. But that's why I think our work's so important. All of the people who are out here giving messages, helping people to go to that next step of waking up to self, because you can get trapped in waking up to the world. You can get trapped, I'm just going to go down another rabbit hole. I'm going to go down another rabbit hole, and I'm going to get angry about this, and I'm going to be furious about this, and I'm going to tell everybody about this, and I'm going to lose all of my friends and family by talking about it. We've all been there. And yes, there's a time for that. There is a time to go through that. And it's very important. You can't skip that step. You've got to kind of be aware. But then there's a point where you've got to let that go and say, okay, I forgive that now. Now I need to start working on me and forgiving me, So I think that's why I keep going.
Yeah.
Because I want people to know that it isn't just what's happening out there. In fact, that's the least important. It's what's happening in here and what's happening up there. That's the most important.
However, from the point of view of role models at that level, I'm going to give 3 names, which is highly contentious.
Oh, okay.
I've been very suspicious of the whole political class for quite a while. And so I asked Charlie, well, is there any redeeming features anywhere here? And I began to ask about different, and there were only 3 names of what I asked, which was basically focused on the Western world.
Yeah.
There were only 3 names that came up where these 3 individuals were above 30%. They're around 33% of ego soul integration. And I got to tell you, for a human being to be at 33%, that is no mean feat. That is an achievement of self. It means there is good self-observation, there is integrity. You can trust them a lot more than the usual passes.
Okay.
Anyway, you want to hear them?
Yes, indeed.
Controversial. Putin,
Putin, yeah.
his second in command, and Sakharova.
And who?
Sakharova. It's a female. I think it's the third or the fourth one within the world stage from the point of view of Russia.
Oh, Russia. So
Uh,
all from Russia, yeah.
they're all from Russia. All three of them. They're the top of Russia, and between the three of them, they are the face of Russia
Yeah.
as they deal with the West and with other countries and continents. And that was quite interesting at the time when I first came across this. And I just double checked with Charlie that, we're still on the same wavelength. And yeah.
Yeah.
And if you detach yourself from the political, how to think, how other people tell you how to think, if you listen to these people, you will hear them. They're serious people.
Yeah. Yeah.
The people who say what they mean, what they say, and they say what they mean. There's no faffing about.
Yeah.
They're totally solid.
Yeah.
So anyway, I won't say any more on that. Just throw that out there.
Sure.
And I'll tell you why I say this. Because my neighbor, uh, whoever he is, a few years ago, we were sort of coming together for something or other. And he began talking about the war with Russia. And he began to foam at the mouth about Putin. And I sort of looked at him with an internal half sneer. And I thought, what do you actually know about Putin? I mean, you're full of anger, full of bile about this man that you've never met. How is that possible? Because he's been reading mainstream media and he is being manipulated like a marionette, like everyone else is.
Awesome.
Now, I'm not saying that Putin is good or Putin is bad. I personally have never met him. So, because I've never met him, I withhold my judgment. And the only things that I've ever heard about him is, I've heard him speak many a time. He's a serious guy. And then I realized that he says what he means and he means what he says. And, so I have respect for the guy, but that's all I know. But I'm not going to say he's a great guy any more than I'm going to say he's a horrible man because I don't know him. But this is what we do. We have all these strong opinions about people we've never met. Why? Because we're being manipulated and we haven't questioned them. We need to question everything.
Yeah. A long time ago, I stopped watching the TV, turned the TV off. Best thing I ever did in my life, amongst many other things. But then I was a teacher. I was a teacher in the UK. I was teaching Spanish. And in my classes, we would have a conversation about topical happenings, current affairs, etc. And every week I would say, so what's happening in the world? Yeah. And everybody would tell me. And what I would discover was that generally most people were all talking about one topic. There's one topic. Generally, this leader of this country is very bad. Somebody needs to do something about it. We need to go and kill all of those people. Just the usual, but always the same topic. And I used to think, that's worrying. That, we're all individuals. Yes, we're all individuals, except everyone's got the same opinion. And then, but that wasn't the worrying thing. That it was worrying, but the worrying thing was the week after. I would say to them, because I was still impacted by what they said, I would say, so how's that going? How's the situation in Libya or whatever? And they would say, oh, I don't know. But that guy, the other guy, he's bad. Somebody needs to do something. And I thought, what happened to this regime change that was happening and bombings and everything, and they couldn't even remember. It was out of the ken. And I thought, wow, the television does a great job, a fantastic job, but not just of putting ideas into the mind, taking other ones out. And I don't know how you find, but now everything's moving quickly. I understand that. And I understand that we're kind of in the toroidal field, we're coming down the thin bit in the middle, and it's very fast. But I'm aware that people's retention, even my retention of what happened 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, I forget because everything's happening so quickly. But people have no memory. You know, when you talk to people about the pandemic, they can't really remember that much now. You know, and I say, well, do you remember when they did this and this and this and this? And people going, no, I don't think it was that bad. You know, so the television, it's what a tool, you know, or media, let's call it that. But to put ideas in and to take old ones out, that one's not working now. We'll put this one in. See, it's awesome what they do. Hats off to them.
So if we talk about the shadow now,
Yeah.
then some of the shadow aspect of humanity does not even belong to the individuals. So we've got this group of people who are manipulating the average NPC player and the other guys with the L plate still on, and they're manipulating them into experiencing or displaying reactive emotions. They've been harvested, and that is an energy that is being used to foment and maintain a status quo. And this is the problem. This is why people will struggle to wake up, because they're under the effect of a shadow which is not of their own making. It's something that's come their way from outside. And I mean, we all have, you know, I say we all, I don't, but sorry, that was unnecessary. But
Many of us.
but we all have all these repressed emotions in the background out of awareness, and they impinge onto our world, onto the people around us, looking for a means of redressing the imbalance, of helping us to become aware of that part of our psyche which is disassociated from us, from our consciousness completely. And that is something that we're subject to and we're dealing with on a day-to-day basis. But this is something different. This is not ours, not individually at any rate. This is something which is being manufactured and which is affecting individuals and stopping them from waking up to, like, it's a bit like you're under the water. You don't know you're under the water till you come above the water and you take a deep breath. Then you know the difference. But there's something like that. You know, we are at the mercy of which in effect is a bit like a hidden force. We're at the mercy of these hidden forces. And this is why it's so important to begin to create separation within our psyche, to become a witness to what's going on in our bodies, in our thoughts, so that we can say, no, that's not me. A bit like when I was with that guy, the neighbor, and he was, foaming at the mouth about Putin and the Russians. Well, if I hadn't been able to separate, I would have been caught in the, horrible, yeah. And you get into that negativity. And we need to be so observant of ourselves in relation to others because it's out there. It's an oppressive force just at the edges of our psychic awareness. It's there impinging on us.
Sure. Yeah, and they're very good at it, and they've studied it a lot, and they studied us a lot. They understand, because in my experience, having gone down the road of hypnosis and understanding hypnosis and studying it, I'm aware that we are, as people, incredibly suggestible. We can, and even overtly, people can suggest things overtly. I was looking at a study that they did a while ago about giving people false memories, and what they discovered was this: they would ask people questions, and they would just say, "Do you remember this situation when you were a child?" And the person would say, "No, that didn't happen to me." Okay. And then they would ask them other questions, but they kept repeating, like maybe a handful of questions. They repeated them 3 times. Then they let the people go off and do the thing, and they came back after a week later. And when they asked them the same question, "Do you remember?" the people said, "Yeah, I do." And not only did they remember and say, "Yes, that happened," but they had a big story attached to it, a whole tale to tell. And it wasn't their experience. It was implanted. And I think this is what they understand, that those who rule the media, all of this programming that goes on, they understand how easy it is to program us. And they do it all of the time.
And they've had a lot of practice.
They've had lots of practice, and they've had, let's be honest. How much will they have invested in these kind of experiments? We hear about the experiments, but God only knows what they know, what to do. And so what I've discovered about that is that when you know that you're being manipulated, it's virtually impossible to manipulate you, because the mind has this great reticular activating system. It has the guardian on the gate that says, "Hang on a minute, I can smell bullshit. So I'm going to nothing's coming in. Nothing. Unfortunately, sometimes we reject things that we should take in, but we won't because we're protecting ourselves. But once we're aware, this is the beauty of waking up to the world. At least for the first step, when people wake up to the world, then they bring the drawbridge down or up, and not much gets in anymore. And so really it's just a matter of then their job of working on that shadow self, getting to cleanse all the shit that, as you said, it's not all their shit. It's been given to them. But at least they know that there's not going to be more coming in, or it's going to be a minimum compared to what it was before, So it's good news.
Yeah.
Waking up is a beautiful thing.
It's interesting what you just shared. Never thought of it this way before, but we've got a genetic imprint, and that has programs of its own. And then through our experiences in life, we also develop ways of meeting our engagement, our actions in the world. And then we've got the mind, which is the one that they do their best to manipulate. And the interesting thing is that we actually live in the present if we're in our senses. And so the past is not really here or there. It's quite irrelevant. We hang on to the past, but as you say, the stories from one particular viewpoint. You got 2 brothers talking about being 5 and 7 years old, and they both see the world differently. They've had a different experience. So what is the truth? Truth is very subjective. And I mean, and this is, you and I, when we work with people, we help them to change the story so that they're no longer affected by a particular way of looking at it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So memory is not fixed. Memory is just a storyboard. And so we are far healthier if we rely on our genetic and emotional, I don't mean reactions, but immediacy of dealing with the world when we're in the present. This is a truer engagement with the world than when we rely on memories from the past to inform how to behave in the present.
Yeah.
Makes sense to you, I think.
Yeah, it does. It does. And it reminds me of I was just happened to bump into a video of a guy talking about time being linear. And he was saying we have this perception of beginning, middle, end. We have this perception of linear time, like, 100 years ago, 100 years in the future. And he said, of course, that's just a perception. There is no linearness to time. There's only now, and there only ever has been now. And no matter what we imagine that exists beyond now, it's just an imagination. It's just a figment of our imagination. All that we have is now. And yeah, it made me think of that because I was listening. I've had the concept of, the emissaries just keep saying there's no such thing as time. Every now and again, they just slip it in. Remember, there's no such thing as time. It's just a perception that we have here. It's the same with our perception of truth. Like we have these perceptions of what's real, that I want to know the truth. And, I'm in the truth movement. And, I'm even the Jehovah's Witnesses, they call their religion the truth. And it's the biggest lie you could possibly ever.
No. It's the truth for them.
It's
their truth.
It's the truth for them. It is. However, when you peel back the layers and you understand that our human this vehicle, we don't have the potential nor the ability to actually capture the truth. We don't have it. Our processing doesn't allow us to get the truth. We only get a perception of the truth, a piece of the truth. And so we end up fighting our lives, fighting to get something that we never really had the chance to have ever. The same as we spend our life, like I used to, living in the future, which doesn't exist. Or some people are living in the past, which doesn't exist. And it's like we do waste a lot of our time here.
So let me give you one example. This came to me. I'm going to talk about food. So if you take a young child who has not been preconditioned as to what to eat, so the child is totally in the moment, in the present, and you give him an asparagus or a little piece of bacon, that child will invariably go for the bacon or a little bit of jerking or a bit of meat. They will choose the meat because they're not choosing with their head. They haven't got a belief system that this or that food is good or bad for me.
Sure.
Their body's telling them, just like the cow knows to eat grass. No, they don't need to be taught to eat grass. They know. How do they know? Because it's built into their genetic makeup.
Sure.
So they're totally in the present. I'm hungry. Oh, that's what I want. Cow. Eat it. That cow. That's what I want. Grass.
It's the carnivore coming out in you.
That's me looking at the cow. That's what I want. Cow. But we do that, you see. We're not even in the present when it comes to food.
Yeah.
Because we're choosing things out of memory rather than out of, oh, I feel, I really want that. And I don't mean because of addiction, because, I want that cake. No, you're just addicted to the sugar.
Sure.
Yeah. oh, I really fancy a glass of wine. That's not your body asking for it. That's your memories.
Absolutely. So let me, because we've been chatting for just over an hour now. Let me ask you a question to finish.
Yeah.
Where we are now and where we are going forward, what would you say would be the major changes that you perceive we're going to see and feel?
The defining one, and already I can see it because Charlie told me years ago that world population will actually go down to around 6.5 billion people.
Okay.
And you think, hold on, by 2046, it should be 9 billion something, the way that we've been progressing. So that's a huge change. And okay, and how's that going to happen? But now I'm reading, I'm watching videos of people who are doing research, and they're saying 30% of women, they're not getting pregnant. Yeah. The COVID has damaged their insides. That's just the woman. Then you got, yeah, then you got the man. I thought, well, that could explain it. You know, plus, they're now going to kill babies at birth if you want it. If you want an abortion, hey, no problem. Oh, it's going to be born tomorrow, but you say today you change your mind. No problem. Yeah, I mean, like, the other end. Oh, yeah, you can kill anybody. Yeah, you want to kill this guy? Yeah, no problem. If it's near, yeah, I'll just give the ticks there. Yeah, that's good. Off you go. They, I can see the world changing in such a way that those who pull in the levers, they're determined to reduce world population. And I'm looking around. Actually, I hate to say this, but Charlie might be right. I've always been hedging my bets about Charlie with regards to the future in that sense. But I'm thinking if that really does come to pass, you better keep going because this is happening. So that's the biggest change at the moment, which I see coming over the horizon, the decline in world population. We'll see.
Okay. And what about so on the positive side, in terms of what we would call the Great Awakening, what do you see might happen?
Nothing yet. It's early days.
Sure.
We're only, where are we? 5 months past the gate.
Yeah,
And the beginning is always the hard. Yeah, it's a steep road.
sure.
So that beginning is tough. Uh, I am hopeful. I am hopeful. I've recently joined X, and I thought, right, I'll start putting my stuff on X. And I'm beginning to get a little bit more feedback from that than I was from YouTube or Facebook
Yeah,
or even Telegram, to be honest. So it's a new medium. There are people out there. Um, but I'm not counting my chickens just yet. It's still a little bit early on that score.
sure. Yeah. Yeah, because you mentioned 15 years, yeah? 15 years of a
Yeah.
window that we've got. Yeah.
15 years window for the sun's rays to shine. But then there's another nearly 5 years before people are taking off planet.
Okay.
But it means suddenly the light goes off. So that means that within this 15 years, there has to be enough people already connected so that they've cleared a lot of their debris, a lot of the trauma from their shadow. Because we keep ourselves in the darkness because everybody's projecting their shadow into the environment, quite apart from what the guys in charge are doing. with the manipulation. And it's very difficult to lift your head above the parapet. However, as people clear parts of their shadow, there's not so much projecting going on. People can see each other clearly. They're not reacting to each other. They've stopped listening to the manipulation. So that part begins to disappear from their world. They're no longer at the mercy of that hidden influence. It will speed up, and I'm hoping that by the 15 year, there will be more than enough people who will have cleared their connection with their heart, so that those stragglers who still have the L plates on will find it easy to wake up, because there won't be such pressures on them
Yeah.
from the dark side.
Yeah.
So I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful. But it's early days, okay? It's very early days.
It's early days. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, fantastic.
Keep,
Well,
keep,
what?
keep your eyes open on the world population. That's the
Okay. Okay.
that's the defining.
Let's see. Let's see. All right. Beautiful, Sal. Well, thank you very much for sharing your thoughts and your wisdom with us. It's been a real pleasure talking to you again.
I don't see myself as very wise, but thank you. But it's nice speaking with you anyway. I enjoy our talks.
So do I, always, yeah. And we'll talk again. We'll come together in a while and see how we're getting on. See see whether we've seen any more steps happening. All right, Sal. Take care of yourself then.
You too. All the best. Bye for now.